Today's episode, I'm going to entitle it the BLOCKBUSTER Report, The Rape of Ukraine, and you're going to see why. This is a very unusual opportunity that we're going to have. Today, we're going to be exposed to a situation that the left-wing media has spent thousands of hours trying to cover up, almost as much as they tried to cover up Biden. And it's going to give you a sense of what happens when you have this kind of rampant corruption like we have been describing over the course of the last 7 or 8 episodes. This is what happens on a major scale. There's a report that was issued some time ago. It was December 19th, 2017. It's from the Accounting Chamber. Now, the Accounting Chamber is a constitutional committee of some sort, an auditing committee. It's independent of the government, and it is supposed to assess the spending of money. And what it does here in assessing the spending of money is it points out that $5.3 billion between, I believe, 2014 and 2017, $5.3 billion is basically, in one way or another, not properly accounted for, and it's possible that it's more than $5.3 billion in foreign aid. I've been informed that about $3.7 billion of that is American foreign aid, and that information came from the expert in the Ukrainian parliament on budget and foreign aid. So, whatever, a good deal of it's American money, as you know. What are the problems that are listed in here? The problems are that, number one, they say the assistance was not focused on the needs of the government. Which means it was useless. Then the results of the projects that did happen did not meet the priorities and the expectations when they were funded by the United States or other governments. No one evaluated the effectiveness of it. In other words, there was no follow-up to say, oh, this was really a good project. This was a good use of 4 million or 5 million or 6 million. And the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, which is supposed to evaluate these programs, did not and could not ensure proper accounting. They didn't provide for registration of the projects, and they admit they actually don't know how much money was actually spent. And they don't know how much money is actually unaccounted for. So let's say 5.3 billion in a little over 2 years is the minimum. Are you shocked? If you're not, $5.3 billion in unaccounted for, not properly evaluated foreign aid. A couple of examples might make it a little simpler. There's one project, since 2009, the U.S., with the lion's share of the money, the Ukrainian government itself, and the UN, putting in a small amount of euros, they've been building a database to do this for recording and monitoring projects using foreign funds. It hasn't been done yet. The money's been spent, but it hasn't been done yet. So it couldn't do its job to evaluate this or to investigate it. And there's legislation proposed for doing it, but the evaluation of the committee is that the legislation is inadequate. This report is an indictment of the corruption at the highest levels of the Ukrainian government. But it's also an indictment of the Obama administration. This is our money, and they knew a damn thing about it. Imagine President Trump got this report? I don't know. I don't think he'd sleep through it. Don't think he would have slept through Benghazi either. But Obama certainly slept through it. He didn't do anything about it. Nothing. I don't know, was he actually president? In any event, it's worse than that. It's worse than that because it's not just a matter of being negligent or grossly negligent. There's a reason that this report was never investigated. A specific reason why it was never investigated. And we're going to tell you that reason, and the witnesses are going to tell you that reason. And Mr. Durkash is going to tell you that reason, and you're going to see him recorded. So let's go to Durkash's interview on this subject. In his interview, he lays out the fact that this accounting chamber is an independent body that on December 19, 2017, reported that a minimum of $5.3 billion in foreign aid, and he described it as it was ineffectively and untransparently reported. So let's listen to his description of that and of the document of the accounting chamber. And remember, Mr. Durkash is the chairman of the Committee on Accountability, so this is his area of expertise within the Rada or the Parliament. So let's listen to his brief description, and then we'll go into a little more detail.
Технической помощью. Which investigated the issues with the technical aid from United States to Ukraine. Не только Соединенных Штатов, но и Европы в том числе. Not in the United States, including the Europe and other sources. И мы нашли те документы, которые показывают о неэффективности использования. And member of parliament defined the proofs is what ineffectively used this money, this aid here in Ukraine. Мы увидели решение счетной палаты. They find out that the conclusion of the accounting palate of Ukraine. Это очень независимый конституционный орган. Constitutional bodies of the Ukrainian government.
Also been translated into English. This is done by an organization of your government that would be considered like an independent accounting organization.
They not belong to the Ukrainian government. This is independent organization.
So this is what we would call an independent accounting report.
Accounting, yes.
And it goes to 19 December 2017. So Durkash points out that $5.3 billion was spent inappropriately and for unaccountable purposes. And then to make it easier for us, he tries to use a smaller example so we'll understand, 5.3 billion, there are a lot of examples. So he tries to use an example such as this. There's a $4 million grant to improve the Corruption Investigatory Bureau. And of that $4 million, $2 million is shared with an NGO or given to an NGO. And at best, $2 million shows up for the government agency. We don't know what happened to that $2 billion. I think this would be a good time for us to take a break. For those of you who know me, in addition to law and politics, I'm passionate about the Yankees, baseball, football, all sports to watch, golf to play, history to read, opera, classical music to listen to and watch, and cigars to relax and socialize. And I have definite opinions on the best cigars for the right time and the right place. And you'll hear about that too. But the revolution in cigars took place in the 1990s. Most cigars then were machine-made with foreign ingredients. Now it's just the opposite. Most are heteromono, man-made. All organic, natural, and premium. The revolution was led by one man and one man alone, Marvin Shankin, and Cigar Aficionado magazine. Marvin had been rating wines quite successfully for Wine Spectator magazine, and he brought the rating system to cigars. The first cigars rated in the 90s were gone in a flash. Even now, the first thing I do when I get my magazine is I go right to the ratings page. Here it is. 93, 91. Oh yeah, I'll go for that one. Then there'll be 94. Oh, 92. Problem is you got to get there fast because they go fast. This revolutionized the cigar industry, and quality rose to the top. Then there's the cigar of the year. Try to get them as fast as possible because they're gone pretty quick. This magazine revolutionized the industry. And I'll tell you what, this month is Cigar of the Year. Cigar of the Year. What are these for? Cigar of the Year. You better get this magazine quick, because these cigars are going to be gone very, very quickly. Go to the link on our website and order it. And you'll be able to get down to your cigar store and get to smoke a few of these, and you let me know which ones you like better, because we can have a really good conversation about it. Sometimes I do agree with Marvin, and when I don't, I let my opinion be known, and Marvin usually says, stick to the law. Also, along with rated cigars, there are articles on politics, sports, interesting profiles, and Marvin also has Wine Spectator, Spirit Advocate. If you like wine, if you like scotch, if you like bourbon, if you like rye, if you like vodka, if you like gin, they're the magazines for you. You know what? Subscribe to Cigar Aficionado right now to the link on our website. Welcome back. And then, just 2 months ago, there was a criminal case filed because of $700,000 for improving the Office of Corruption Investigations. They found $700,000 had been diverted, and it was spent for food, banquets, vodka, whiskey, partying, trips. So let's hear Mr. Durkash explain this. $5.3 billion was spent for inappropriate, unaccountable purposes.
Yes, it's exactly what it is.
And that would be.
And the huge money, huge amount of money, you can find out a very small piece of this part of money. For example, the fighting against corruption in Ukraine. For example, this is the copy of the part of the criminal investigation when the $4 million US dollars from 2014 to 2016 from the government of the United States. $2 million was shared with a different NGO here in Ukraine. So I can give it to you this and provide it to you right now. The next papers and net documents is very fresh. Just recently it comes up. It's 2 months ago. The criminal investigation for fighting with corruption, $700,000 was spending for the just fourchette, banquets, lease, vodka, whiskey, for nothing.
So this is what a large percentage of the money that the U.S. is giving to Ukraine is used for. And the $5.3 billion would have to be a very large percentage of the amount of money given during that period of time, I would assume. Not just a small percentage.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we're talking about that.
Well, Mr. Durkash is absolutely right. We need the money. Of course the government needs the money. This is the people's money. It's our money, our taxpayers' money, and it's taxpayers' money we're giving them to help them, and it's being diverted. And boy, is it being diverted. And in some cases, it's being stolen, as you will see. And remember, this all happened under Obama, 2014 to 2017. It all happened under Obama, and it all happened when Joe Biden was the point man for Ukraine. Our Joe was there. Our Joe was there to reduce corruption. He was there to create more accountability. And things got worse and much, much worse. And all of this was going on under his nose. Because he was too busy trying to figure out how much he was going to collect in bribes from the crookedest guy in Ukraine, Zlochevsky. Because if you think those payments to his son were anything else other than bribes, I guess the expression is I could sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, you have to be really stupid. Of course they were bribes, and there's testimony that they were bribes, and that Zlochevsky made the deal with him in 2014 and said, you protect my company, and I'll pay for your son's no-show job. And he paid him a lot, and the money keeps increasing as the Ukrainians keep investigating. It used to be 5 million. It's now up to about 8. And the major investigator, Kulyuk, tells me 8's the floor. It keeps continuing to grow. So we'll have to see what the end result is. But our point man was too interested in pulling in millions from Mykola Zlochevsky, who was one of the biggest crooks in the Ukraine, than to worry about 5.3 billion, of which 3.7 billion is American money, because it was being stolen under his nose. And I guess if he said much about it, they would have told him to keep his mouth shut because he was his own stealing. I mean, everybody in the Ukraine knew that Biden was corrupt. The only one who doesn't know it is the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC, all the swamp media. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to this portion of Mr. Derkash's statement, interview, testimony, because this is something that you deliberately didn't hear from the corrupt Schiff, Pelosi, and all those Democratic phonies who attempted for improper purposes to remove the President of the United States and completely mischaracterized the conversation between Trump and Zelensky. Let's hear what a Ukrainian has to say about that, and a Ukrainian who's worried about corruption in his country, how it's hurting his people. Let's see what they have to say about it. You didn't hear this testimony before the witch hunt committee, did you?
But President Trump was the first president of the United States who asked the questions, how they spend this money. How they spend the point of view of the citizen of United States and the Ukrainian people.
All right, well, you heard that. President Trump was the first president who asked about how money was spent. The first president who asked about how money was spent. I don't know, maybe they just go back to Obama because I don't think he asked many questions about anything. But they can't seem to remember another American president. And as Derkash said, he's the first American president to ask how money was spent for the citizens of the U.S., and he mentioned Ukraine and Ukraine. This is a critical point. And it should have been included in the testimony during the witch hunt. It shows that President Trump had a perfect justification, almost a necessity, to have those discussions about corruption, including Biden's part in it, because it affected the relationship between the two countries. Went back to 2016, nothing to do with 2020. I'm sorry, you can't go take a bribe for 5 million, 8 million, 10 million, 20 million. You can't let a country go wildly corrupt and then say, oh, I'm running for president. You can't investigate me. I mean, an awful lot more Democrats would be running for president if they got immunity from major crimes. And the corrupt Democrats left out this aspect of it completely. That's what a president is supposed to do. He's supposed to try to hold accountable the spending of your taxpayer dollars and mine. And he's supposed to make sure that it helps the poor people of a country. And it doesn't go to the oligarchs and the crooked politicians, in this case, Democratic politicians, and their families. This money was going to the oligarchs in Ukraine, and it was going to Obama's fellow Democrats, from his vice president to the families of some other Democrats who also got rich off the Ukraine to the detriment of the people of the Ukraine and the people of the United States. And the swamp media wants us to ignore it. They want us to ignore it because it's going to show that the Obama administration may turn out to be one of the most corrupt administrations in our history. The Clinton Foundation alone might qualify it for that. You add this to it, we're talking about selling out public office all throughout the Obama administration for millions. In fact, not to digress, do you know the country that gave the most money to the Clinton Foundation? Little Ukraine. How could it be that the biggest contributor to the Clinton Foundation is the little government of Ukraine? 45 million population, struggling with economic pressure from Russia. And in 2014, it had only $800,000 in the bank because the Ukrainian oligarchs, many of them friends of the Democrats, took every penny out of the Ukraine. Zlochevsky, Hunter Biden's boss and the guy that was paying Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, the guy who bribed Joe Biden, the guy who Joe Biden got out of trouble. That guy took out $5 billion. And Kolomoisky took out $7 million. And this other guy took out $8 million. And the Yanukovych, nobody knows how much he took out. One transaction alone, $7.5 billion. And all of this was happening under Obama's watchful eyes that were closed. These contributions were with money that was stolen from the poor people of the Ukraine. Take the Bank of Ukraine down to $800,000 under Obama's watchful eye. And meanwhile, Democratic pals are going there, making money, having their children make money, their brothers make money, their family make money. Come on, let's all go take the money from the Ukrainians. They're not watching. After all, we're only taking millions. The Ukrainians are stealing billions. It's more than just the Bidens. And that's the reason why they're covering it up. Because if revealed, it's going to show that the Obama administration was one of the most corrupt administrations in our history. The excesses and the crimes and the pay for play and the bribes that have never been investigated in the Clinton Foundation just continued with Biden. And if this is further investigated, some other people, just wait. But probably the worst part is that when the $5.3 billion in unaccountable foreign aid was revealed, President Obama didn't do what President Trump did, who acted as a steward for U.S. and Ukrainian money. Obama, Biden, and their corrupt embassy in Kiev, first of all, did nothing, which is the usual thing Obama did, and then worse. Nobody wanted to investigate. And you're going to hear why. Because they were afraid of the U.S. Embassy. They couldn't investigate. And they were blocked at every turn by the U.S. Embassy. Now I think we can say the corrupt U.S. Embassy in Kiev. And you're going to find out why they came to me. Listen to the testimony of Durkash.
People.
Now, as a result of this report, your government did try to make an attempt to determine the accountability of this spending. Is that correct? What was established? The police?
В каком-то виде. Это история была, попытки были расследовать полицией, но когда... Yes, it is. So they tried to investigate this case during the Ukrainian police.
Когда я и другие депутаты...
When he's and other member of parliament asking this question, nobody wants to looking for any response. Nobody wants to be involved in this investigation because everybody declare we're gonna have some problem with the visa issue. We're gonna have some huge pressure from United States Embassy.
And did the United States Embassy interfere in this process?
Это открытая информация. Yeah, this is public information. Yes.
And what did the U.S. Embassy do?
Я не могу говорить, что делало посольство. Я знаю, что делал я как депутат. He can't say what the U.S. embassy do, but he had to declare what he do. Я использовал все способы. He tried to find out any sources how he can get this information. They keep the huge folder of the papers. Но мы не можем его реализовать сами. But they cannot realize, they cannot release these papers without your help and without your legal investigation. That's why he called to Mr. Giuliani. Я обратился к сенатору. Then he called to the senator with his colleague, member of Ukrainian Parliament, Alexander Dubinsky. О необходимости создания межпарламентской группы. To create the interparliamentary group between US and которая будет называться «Стоп, друзья коррупции». We call it the друзья Украины, стоп коррупция. Friends of Ukraine, stop corruption. И попросил господина Джулиани, как человека, который много занимался борьбой с коррупцией, эффективно. And then I will ask Mr. Giuliani, who will be deep involved in the fighting against corruption in the United States, to help him.
This wasn't going on just for a year or two or three, by the way. Mr. Derkash explains that this was going on for 10 years for the entire Obama administration. This was one of their playgrounds. There are others, but this was one of their playgrounds, and now we have plenty of proof of it. Let's listen to the testimony on that.
Я хочу, чтобы было понятно, что на промежутке времени he wants to clarify his statement that during the last 10 years была построена схема, когда все жили was created the structure where everybody was happy. Embassy, the people who've been around embassy, like NGO or civil activists. Часть людей в Министерстве экономики, которая фиксировала техническую. Part of the official government employee who've been involved in this activity. Поездки. For example, traveling. Фуршеты. Организация выпуска дорогих буклетов. The issues published and they're very expensive presentations. Отправленные деньги на экспертов. They cover the all expenses for any consulting services. Деньги направлены на написание законов, которые не работают. Money for the legal consulting, for the creating the new laws who doesn't work, unfortunately. Ну, например, вот НАБУ. For example, НАБУ. Было потрачено громадное количество денег. They spent $1 billion technical aid from United States. И в результате мы имеем рейтинг НАБУ with zero results, and we have the rates of NABU который меньше, чем рейтинг прокуратуры. Less than rate of the General Prosecutor Office. И меньше, чем рейтинг полиции. And less than the rates of the Ukrainian police. И меня, например, как гражданин.
Just in case there's any doubt about the embassy interfering in the investigation of these funds, Mr. Derkash answers, how often did the embassy interfere? Let's see what he says.
I have to say they blocked any information, any leaks, any published, anything what do not be approved previously by the U.S. Embassy. And who started this investigation immediately was attacked by U.S. Embassy.
Anyone trying to investigate was attacked viciously by the embassy, by the association of NGOs, all the left-wing groups, and also by the press. Sounds a little like America if you find evidence on a Democratic prince. But let's hear what Mr. Derkash has to say about that.
Was attacked by NGO and by the civil activists.
So this is like what the press does for anyone in America who defends President Trump.
It's the same as what's going on in the States.
But the thing that's very surprising about this is that there could have been an attempt to create some accountability for this, and it's our embassy that is encouraging the waste of American money. Our embassy is encouraging the waste of American money. And there has to be a reason for that, Mr. Durkash. And what's the reason for it? Why does our embassy not want this investigated? Is it because of the way in which they distribute this money to NGOs that they favor and that are largely left-wing?
Я думаю, что это не прямая коррупция. He said it's underlying corruption. Это помощь в разных вопросах. It helps with the different issues. Воспитание вокруг себя таких вот прожирателей совместно денег. It creates the people who just obtain this money. В отдельных случаях уверен, что это коррупция. And the different cases, he's sure for 1000% this is direct corruption. Мы не можем это.
Part of the reason for this easy flow of money to all different people is the embassy is the one who made the decision. Even though the money was granted to a specific part of the Ukrainian government, the embassy would then step in and it would decide what NGO to give it to, non-government organization to give it to. What do you need the middleman for? Or is that just like the bagman or the agent when you have a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act case? Seems to me that way, and I think when this is laid out, you're going to see that. But let's hear Mr. Durkash's description.
Yes.
And during the Obama years, which is what we're talking about here, were those NGOs generally very activist, more or less left-wing groups like Soros's NGO?
More of them.
Much more of them?
Much more of them.
So our taxpayer dollars were not going to the Interior Department or the Department of Justice or the Department of Labor or the Social Services Department of Ukraine. They were going to non-government organizations, some of them out of Ukraine, outside of the Ukraine, that had a specific political philosophy, and only to the ones that had a specific political philosophy. Socialist, communist, anti-American, anarchist, philosophy that seeks to destroy the basic structure of a free economy and replace it with crippling socialism, maybe even communism, and maybe even some organizations that seek to deliberately undermine the values of Western civilization. This is what we're paying for. This is what your dollars are going to. You think your dollars are going to help fight corruption in the Ukraine. Hey, maybe some. Nowhere near all. This isn't some fantasy. This isn't some right-wing conspiracy. This is a socialist, anarchist conspiracy made up of people who would like to have one big world and everybody's under a socialist system and they're in charge. And I guess, like Soros, they keep their own wealth in businesses. So again, let's hear Durkash's description of how this works. So this process of unaccountability, at least from what you can tell, has been going on since 2014.
Этот процесс, о котором мы сейчас говорим, как минимум начался в 2014 году. Думаю, что раньше. Maybe early.
Maybe earlier. And does this involve any of the military spending?
Это касается любой военной помощи? Думаю, что это отдельная история. No, it's different things and separate things. Она же как бы секретная, not related to any military helps.
So, we've heard Mr. Durkash's description. There are other witnesses to this. There are other witnesses on the record to this. But this is the most comprehensive of the witnesses on the record. But beyond Mr. Durkash, I interviewed two other witnesses, I'd say in different ways, both of whom have more detailed information about this. And I can't reveal them, and I can't show you tapes of them right now, because one way or another they are actively investigating various aspects of this case. Some of them are investigating the collusion part, some are investigating the money laundering part, some are investigating the Biden part, but they are in very sensitive stages of this case. I took notes of what they told me, and I am free to disclose the following. These are two Ukrainian officials. One is a very brave and talented detective. He reminds me of the assistant U.S. attorneys, the FBI agents, and the detectives from the New York City Police Department I worked with when I was an assistant U.S. attorney and U.S. attorney. He's enthusiastic. He's honest. I think he's been fired 3 or 4 times because he was getting too close. And he is disgusted by the thieves in his government, and he is shocked by the thieves in our government. He didn't believe that similar things happen in the United States. He had this view of Americans as what we pretend we are, not as people who send our kids there for no-show jobs, get cases dismissed on crooked oligarchs. And he believes, got laundered money, and he believes some of it, including that 800,000 or 900,000, in addition to the money that went to Hunter Biden as a bribe, that there's more money that he's hot on the trail of. The other is a parliamentarian whose records of money laundering are about as precise and complete as you can get in a situation like that. You saw one example of it with that Latvian transaction. He's on the prowl for a lot more than that, and doesn't think he'll be completed with that until March, April. And it keeps moving a little bit, but I can be sure of certain things that they said to me. They've reviewed this in great detail as part of their investigation. The $5.3 billion can't be accounted for because they say, in many, many cases, they can prove it was diverted for a lot of it through the NGOs, but not all. It was diverted for 2 purposes. Some were politically corrupt purposes to support extremely left-wing, socialist, communist, and what they describe as anarchist organizations, not just in Ukraine, but in other countries. So when they want a group of international people to say that Shokin is corrupt, even though there's no evidence of Shokin is corrupt, that's how they can produce that in 2 days. They call up the people they're paying off, the people that are sharing crooked money with them, and then they get the guy in London to say it, and the guy, he's running the anti-corruption thing in London, and he says, oh yes, for some time we've been concerned that Shokin is corrupt. Oh yeah, thank you for the 2 minutes. This is shocking. It's a shame. So some of it gets diverted for political purposes. And then a lot of it gets diverted to enrich the already rich oligarchs and the greedy American politicians. The money our president and Congress thinks is going to the Ukrainian people is going to Soros NGOs or Soros-like NGOs and other crooked intermediaries. One of them described it this way. I said, is there anything common among the NGOs? They said, yeah, I would describe them as they're either Soros NGOs or they're the children of Soros. And what he meant by that was there's not a single conservative, moderate, they're all left of left of left. And in Europe, when you get left of left of left, you're pretty much falling off the cliff. Sometimes Ukrainian agencies get zero, nothing. Sometimes they get some of it. And when they do, they're owned by the NGO, or they're owned by the corrupt embassy staff, as NABU was, which we described to you earlier. This anti-corruption organization turned into a corrupt organization that was doing the bidding of Soros and his people. And I just have a hot, breaking story. I want to make sure I have this right. This happened within the last day or two. I want to show you that this continues to go on today in 2020. The process of corruption set up by Soros, by ANTAC, by the U.S. Embassy, which you have heard about from Durkash and these other witnesses, is going on today. Today, the Ukrainian National Police, within the last 2 days, filed a case against a man named Vitaly Shabunin. We'll put his name up on the screen for you. I know these names are difficult. Vitaly Shabunin runs ANTAC. Remember ANTAC? ANTAC is the Soros NGO, non-government organization, that got the dirty information on Trump, on Manafort, on Trump Jr. and the Trump campaign. They work with Ms. Shalupa, the crooked operative of the Democratic National Committee. They work with crooked parliamentarian Lyshenko. They work with Artem Sitnik, who held the press conference to try to drive Trump out of the race. And their case was dismissed as a result of Biden's bribe of Poroshenko, because Antonovich instructed Lutsenko to dismiss the case on ANTAC. She likes to say that Lutsenko has retracted it. I've questioned Lutsenko twice. Lutsenko has not retracted it. And there's individual evidence for it, including Kulyuk and, I believe, Kolonitsky. And the case was dismissed, and there's a letter to demonstrate it. She is lying. She's committing perjury. I know she's a left-wing saint. But every once in a while, even left-wing saints commit perjury. Maybe more than you think. Well, Vitaly Shabunin, who is the head of ANTAC, this wonderful Soros anti-corruption organization, the one that put together the corrupt Nabu. The Ukrainian National Police have just filed a case on him saying that $142 million is missing. $142 million. I mean, these guys don't go cheap. And they don't have Joe Biden around to fix it. And they don't have Antonovich around to intimidate them to drop the case. The case will carry a criminal penalty of up to 7 or 8 years. 142 million is a lot of money to be missing from a anti-corruption NGO. Sounds like ANTAC is like Nabu. It's a contradiction. It's a way to fool you. It's a way to fool you and the press that is willing to be fooled by anything Soros says, by anything Biden says, by anything that Clinton say. They're willing just to buy it. You know, like the case was debunked. The case is debunked. You've seen more evidence of this than anything ever claimed against Donald Trump. During the recent witch hunt, much was said by the Democrats about how important an ally Ukraine is to the United States, and how important it is to us in our dealing with Putin and in our dealing with Russia. What phonies! If they were interested in improving the situation of the Ukraine so that it could be a strong and reliable ally, not only against Russia, but in general, then they do something about the corruption there, rather than for 11 years watch it, and as you've heard testimony, make it worse, and participate in it, and cover up what high members of their party did in selling out their offices?